So, it's been a while. I took a long break from the Christmas holidays, and I think I can hold this for much longer, honestly. So, I'm going to tell you a story. Before I was known in the Doom community as JMAA, I was known as Jack the Ripper. When I moved into the zdoom forums, some people start knowing me as JMAA there. You just need to notice that back then I was around 18 to 20 years old. My young age did make my autism more noticeable, and understandably so. Not only my English was worse back then, but my social skills were also bad. So it was evident that I got myself from time to time into some fling words and such, with users from the zdoom forums often using the "look at me" moniker, usually against me for some reason. People knew me for a bunch of Doom mods that I didn't finish, including a gay furry dating sim made in gzdoom or something. But the last straw that broke the camel's back in the zdoom forums was when I talked about a dirty toilet in my workplace, and they banned me from there. I secluded myself for a bit on doomworld afterwards, and after that things were pretty uncertain. There was people from the zdoom forums in doomworld who still hated me for certain things, such as the time I made a Santonome deathmatch WOD with certain LGBT themes in it called Butthole Deathmatch. And after that, all I know is that I went into YouTube by myself. Years passed by. I even entered the far right and escaped back from it, and I thought to myself that maybe trying to redeem myself on doomworld was a good idea after me doing all these sorts of regrettable stuff there. I mean, things got worse when I momentarily came to doomworld when I was in a far right to troll Cyberdemon 531 with a bunch of transphobia, or that moment when I came to CB11's Discord server to say a bunch of anti-Semitic shit. The most logical step is to show off change, apologize, and try to turn a new leaf, and I did. The next day I got banned from doomworld for violation, which is particularly strange. I was being honest in my apology and my good faith, but I didn't mind it too much. Maybe it's understandable that these people were skeptical about me. Blade of Agony comes around then, and I said publicly on Twitter that I will make a video on it. Moments later, a Doom community member by the name of Major Arlene streams, and says this on stream.
JMAA, I'm gonna let y'all guys know right now, stay the fuck away from this person.
From that moment, my life with the Doom community and towards it will be a living hell. Okay, so who the hell is Major Arlene, and why the hell do I find her so problematic? She's been a Doom community member since apparently 2012, making videos on her channel reviewing certain Doom WODs. She started mapping in 2018, and she's the author of WODs such as Dancing in the Abyss or Technicolor Antichrist Box, this latter one being played by myself. She streams on Twitch Doom mapping and gameplays to around an audience of a few people. On regards to her maps though, I had to rip off the band-aid for once and say that her maps are fucking horrible. Okay, maybe they're visually pleasing with a huge amount of line-deaf porn there is in these WODs, but after playing them myself, they're mediocre at best, being some of the most unfun and frustrating unbalanced messes I have encountered in Doom. And I played TNT Evolution for Jim Flint's sake. I have the deep feeling that these maps made by Major Arlene are nothing more than a Doom level design equivalent of McDonald's food. Sure, the aesthetic of it will be something, but like eating a McDonald's burger, it will feel dry, joyless, inedible, and utterly jarring to swallow. Nothing more than empty calories. We'll tackle later what are the implications of these WODs, but for now, I want to settle that her maps are not obviously the sharpest tool in the shed. Maybe a reason why Major Arlene's maps suck ass is because she's not good at Doom. And I mean, seriously, have you seen most of the gameplays on WODs like Sunlust and such? She doesn't even survive the first map of Sunlust. This might be an indication that her understanding of how Doom works, besides the creation of literal line-deaf porn, is below basic. Most of her maps don't have basic grasp of how the Doom monsters work. It feels like a borderline jockwad. Okay, her maps and gameplay suck balls, you might say. Sure, that doesn't sound like an enormous problem, right? Well, that's where you're wrong. Major Arlene is a problem because she seems like a voice of authority on the Doom and retro FPS communities in general. She's a moderator of Doomworld and other communities, at least she was at Doomworld before she left by herself to work on her own projects. I find it hard to believe that she left all by herself, especially considering what I'm about to say about her later, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. She was also one of the major judges at the CAC Awards until very recently, and it often seems ironic that some of the awards nominated in the CAC Awards sometimes are from Major Arlene herself. Sounds pretty strange, isn't it? Why not give awards to technical marvels like Blade of Agony, Bloom, or hell, even Brutal Doom for how Brutal Doom has brought Doom into the mainstream? My friend, that's where problems begin. You will not believe this, but me and other community members have been victims of her relentless cancellations and lies. My drama with Major Arlene began with the whole Blade of Agony debacle when I was basically doing to make a video about Blade of Agony. She came to the stream accusing me of depicting a rape scene in Saspis' Fast Doorbells of Steel before I scrapped this scene completely and before the whole idea of making it a not civil war game as well, instead of a regular retro FPS. It's really funny because back when I was in a full ride, she was pretty nice with me for telling her to try out Johan Weiss for some reason. You know, a game where there's a mention of Nick Fuentes? Ever since Major Arlene got me completely casted out of every community she was in, it went to the point of stalking me, trying to snitch to streamers promoting my games about how I'm still a naughty grifter who pretends to be trans. Seems a bit weird that she's pulling this off, because maybe probably some Kiwi Farms troll told her about it, and that she's still pulling it off to this day. So I decided to investigate. I made an anonymous sting operation on the zdoom Discord server to try to extract information from Major Arlene and such, trying to stroke her ego and all. And the revelation was not just shockingly vile but unsurprising as well. She basically pulled this misinformation from Kiwi Farms and even endorsed reading the OP of the Kiwi Farms thread on me. For those who don't have an idea of what this means, Kiwi Farms is a neo-Nazi harassment forum dedicated to ruining the lives of LGBTQIA+ people and neurodivergent people online. Now, true, Kiwi Farms has been in the limbo of dancing between a diversity of web hostings and other web services trying desperately to be brought back up, but it is a dangerous website nonetheless, and the thread on me, if not just filled with half-truths and distorted realities, is full of utter lies about my life and career online. So the bottom line of this is that Major Arlene is complicit with a bunch of fascists who want me to be dead. You might not believe it, but I'm not the only victim of this. She also went after Tormentor 667 and Realm 667, the creators of Blade of Agony, and I have to state for the record that I have to retract whatever I said about Blade of Agony itself, because it's basically the same talking points that Major Arlene said about it. Blade of Agony is a technical marvel as a Wolfenstein Doom mod that deserves at least a minimum of recognition. The problem is, though, that Major Arlene, probably out of jealousy or spite, decided to cancel the whole career of Tormentor 667 by just pulling out the progressive bullshit talking points such as when the mod had anti-Semitic art in it, or the Holocaust zombies, or that naming Marissa Height, which all could have been if not for historical context and honest mistake at least. I mean, the whole point of the mod is for you to kill Nazis. It should be pretty evident that the inclusion of anti-Semitic museum in a level or so will add into the historical context. Major Arlene was basically accusing Tormentor 67 and his team of being fascists, when you have to consider that members of the team, such as Doom Jedi or Tormentor himself, are Jewish. Now, how the hell will a Jewish person be a fascist? We'll never know. But these are pretty empty, heavy accusations coming from Major Arlene, which got Tormentor 67 completely cast out of the Doom community. You might also remember the whole Sergeant Mark IV debacle, and yes, maybe Mark has been pretty immature in the past, but even though Sergeant Mark IV has been growing as a person and being better these days, people might like Major Arlene have been making sure he doesn't get back to the community despite anything by just slandering his name over and over again. Similar horror stories have happened with people like TrueGod, the lead developer of the Bloom Doom mod, where he was explaining that people like Major Arlene have been making up false criticism about how his mod was confusing and needed a lot of backtracking. If you played Bloom though, you know that was the whole point of the game! And the funny thing about this is that Major Arlene tries to masquerade all of this behind her progressive politics, when in reality, she could have been read from a neo-Nazi forum on someone she hates. Any minimal criticism towards her is considered harassment towards her, despite her stalking and harassing people she dislikes. It might sound surprising, but Major Arlene is nothing more than a mere symptom of the major problem that the new and director of FPS communities face these days. After the inevitable deaths of Doom veterans like Ty Halderman, Jim Flynn, and so on, who were the previous owners of Doomworld and such, Doomworld especially has been taken over by a cult, a circle jerk of a bunch of narcissistic egotists who rely on nepotism alone and everything. These new owners don't even understand Doom, unlike people like Ty Halderman did. Most of these people are basically entirely newbies to the whole Doom scene, who just happen to have an ego of the size of the sun. Hell, I even have a better understanding of Doom because I have been making Doom content and playing Doom since the 2000s or even the 90s. The callouts are a major example of this. It used to reward quality Watson mods, but now it's nothing more than a mere popularity contest. Grabsal was right, the callouts have become like the Oscars. When your awards ceremony rewards such mediocre crap like Major Arlene's maps and completely disregards quality content like Bloom or Blade of Agony for mere bullshit, it loses its purpose. It's not worth anymore as a legit award ceremony. The whole purpose of the Doomworld community these days is to sustain a circle jerk of butt buddies who ride each other's dick out all the time and ostracize anyone who dares criticize them minimally, often accusing them of being fascist or anything similar. This is not to tell that Doomworld has become a haven of fascists or SJWs. This problem transcends politics. It is just a bunch of narcissists ruling these communities with an iron fist, surrounding themselves with yes men who will agree on anything they do. And this needs to be stopped. Major Arlene and the rest of the higher-ups of the Doom and Retro FPS communities need to be overthrown from there, and those communities need to be burned to the ground. We need to erase this cancer from these communities, and while branding our banner of revolution, which will scream out loud our leitmotif in proud unison. Major Arlene is a Nazi.com. You wouldn't believe it, Major Arlene is a Nazi.com actually redirects to the Steam page for Sass vs. Fash. Come on, go get it on Steam. Do me a favor, play Sass vs. Fash. Please?